The life of St. Adalbert is a true lesson in courage, faith, and purpose. From a childhood marked by spiritual formation to the ultimate sacrifice of martyrdom, his journey reveals how fidelity to God can transform not just one person, but entire generations. In this video, you will learn every detail of his mission, understand how his choices shaped his legacy, and discover how to apply his teachings to your own life. Prepare yourself for an intense, inspiring, and profoundly timely story. Adalberto came into the world surrounded by uncertainty, almost as if his life were a candle about to be extinguished with its first breath. A fragile, pale, sickly baby, he made his own mother cry out to heaven for a miracle. And that miracle happened because against all odds, he survived. He wasn't just a breathing child, but a sign of something greater to come. When you look at your own life, do you realize how small events shape destinies? Sometimes, surviving a difficult phase is already a warning that you have a mission to fulfill. While his brothers were enchanted by the sword, power, and disputes, Adalberto had his eyes fixed on silence, on that which cannot be seen, but which transforms. From a young age, he sought refuge in prayer, like someone searching for water in the middle of the desert. And it's curious. Many today spend their entire lives chasing external victories, but forget that the greatest of them is learning to listen to what's within themselves. A practical exercise? Try, before bed, writing in a notebook 3 things you felt deeply that day. This simple habit can become a compass for future decisions. The contrast between him and his brothers was so stark that almost seemed like a hidden preparation. They trained their muscles. He trained his soul. They dreamed of titles. He dreamed of purpose. And this demonstrates something powerful. Everyone is born with different inclinations, and if you try to live someone else's life, you end up frustrated. Have you ever noticed how some people thrive when they follow the less obvious path? Like those who choose reading over distraction or silence over noise. This is how Adalberto began to build his story, never imagining that this different outlook on life would soon lead him to face much greater challenges. Adalberto was called very early to the position of bishop in Prague, a position of enormous responsibility for someone still young. Imagine taking over a city where faith was broken, religious leaders were corrupt, and the people walked in emptiness. He arrived with courage, bringing hope like someone who brings light to a dark room. He visited the poor, cared for the wounded, drew attention to injustices, and little by little won hearts. But all light disturbs darkness. And precisely because he was so firm in his commitment to truth, he began to face resistance. His way of acting left no room for mediocrity. While many sought only power and influence, Adalberto was a living reminder of what faith should be. This attracted admiration from the humble, but also provoked the fury of the powerful. It's always like this. When someone stands out for their character and authenticity, they end up unintentionally exposing the weaknesses of those who live by appearances. And perhaps you felt this in your own life. When you try to do the right thing, it seems like the whole world rises up to discourage you. But it is precisely in these moments that the steadfastness of one's purpose is tested. The weight of rejection grew. Each act of love seemed to generate a new attack. The city, which should have been his care, began to turn its back. Tired, lonely, and scarred by the pain of not being understood, Adalberto made a bitter decision. He resigned from the episcopate. He left the throne many would dream of occupying, because he understood that one cannot govern where there is no room for love. And herein lies a powerful lesson. Persistence is not always a sign of strength. Often, knowing when to let go of what is not flourishing is the greatest act of courage. Perhaps you are holding on to something that no longer fits in your path. And, like Adalberto, you need to accept that letting go is not failure. It is making room for a greater purpose. After abandoning the burden of his position in Prague, Adalbert didn't seek comfort, glory, or recognition. He retreated to a monastery, embracing a life of prayer and silence, like someone diving into deep waters to find their breath. It was there, far from the noise and strife of humankind, that he rediscovered his essence. Often, the greatest answers lie not in the bustling streets, but in the silence that most fear. And it is in this silence that the soul grows stronger. How many times have you tried to solve problems by chasing 1,000 solutions, but deep down, Realize that clarity only came when you stopped to listen to yourself. In the monastery, Adalbert studied, meditated, and placed himself completely in God's hands. Every gesture, every prayer, was like invisible bricks that built an unshakable foundation. He understood that without this deep root, any future mission could crumble under the pressure of the world. And this is a practical lesson for us. If you don't set aside time daily to strengthen your mind and spirit, you will be swallowed up by the rhythm of life. Try, for example, waking up 15 minutes earlier, turning everything off, and simply reflecting on what truly matters in your day. Small acts of silence build great inner strengths. But as peaceful as a retreat was, Adalbert was not called to remain hidden. The preparation in silence was merely the interval before the great mission. And this preparation is a universal principle. Every warrior has their training. Every artist has their invisible practice. Every leader has their hidden moments. Life, in its wisdom, always places us in periods of retreat before launching us into something great. The secret is not to confuse the rest of the soul with giving up. Adalbert was being shaped for something that would go far beyond Prague, something that would touch entire peoples. After years of silence and preparation, Adalbert was called again to the episcopate. He could have refused. After all, he had already felt the weight of rejection and incomprehension. But he agreed to return, not because he desired power, but because he understood that his life did not belong to him, but was an instrument for something greater. This return was not triumphant. There was no celebration or acclaim, but rather a silent new beginning, full of challenges and suspicious glances. Still, his strength lay in not seeking human acceptance, but in fulfilling the mission entrusted to him. This is an essential point. When you anchor yourself in something that goes beyond opinions, nothing can stop you. Adalberto returned with firm heart, ready to rescue the distant hearts, those who lived without faith, those who had lost hope. He reached out to forgotten people, to broken families, to those no one wanted around. With his words, he touched consciences. With his gestures, he aroused compassion. However, resistance also returned. Many still did not accept his firmness, preferring a superficial, undemanding faith. But Adalberto did not compromise principles. This demonstrates the reality we also live in. When you decide to take a stand, there will always be those who criticize. The secret is to keep going, because the seed planted in the right soil will sooner or later blossom. And even in the face of criticism, his work was fruitful. People who were once lost found meaning again. Many who lived in the shadows began to see the light of faith again. This transformation was slow, almost invisible, but true. There's a powerful lesson here. Changing the world doesn't mean winning over multitudes all at once, but touching lives, one by one, in a genuine way. Adalberto shows us that persevering in what is right may seem exhausting at first, but always bears lasting fruit. His return to ministry was not just a physical return to Prague, but a rebirth of his mission as a shepherd of souls. Adalbert's mission took him to territories where the Christian faith was unknown and, in many cases, rejected. He knew the risk, but he did not back down. Arriving among people who still lived under rigid traditions hostile to the gospel, he faced a decisive choice: remain silent to save his own life or proclaim what he believed. Adalbert chose the truth, even knowing the consequences. He was imprisoned, insulted, and finally martyred. His death was not only a tragic end, but the seed of something much greater, for it revealed the strength of a life fully dedicated to a cause that transcended fear. This is a profound point. When you live for something greater than yourself, even death loses its power to intimidate you. Adalbert's martyrdom did not extinguish his voice. On the contrary, it amplified it. Where there had previously been resistance, inspiration was born. His courage became an example for other missionaries, and his memory spanned generations. The blood he shed became a root of faith for lands that once lived in spiritual darkness. It's impossible to ignore the impact of someone who chooses to remain faithful to the end. This truth also applies to our lives. We may not be called to shed blood, but every day we face small choices of fidelity, moments when we must decide between standing firm in our principles or giving in to pressure. It is in these decisions that a legacy is built. Today, St. Adalbert's name is remembered not only as that of bishop or missionary, but as that a man who lived and died for his faith. His martyrdom teaches us that true success lies not in human recognition, but in the courage to be faithful to the purpose entrusted to us. Adalbert's legacy did not end on the day of his death, but lives on in every person who, inspired by his story, decides to persevere even when the path becomes difficult. He shows us that a short life can be infinite in meaning when lived with total surrender. This is the mark of those who choose not only to exist, but to transform the world with their faith. A historia de São Adalberto nos mostra que a verdadeira grandeza não está títulos, posses ou upásicos, mas na coragem de responder ao chamado de Deus em reservas. De infância marcada pela fé, passando pelos desafios da liderança episcopal e do momento extremo do martírio. Cada capítulo de sua vida revela uma mensagem prática para nós. Viver com propósito e viver com intensidade. Ele não foi apenas bispo ou missionário. Foi alguém que entende que cada decisão molda legado. O legado atravessa séculos porque foi construído sobre sacrifício, fidelidade e amor incondicional. Essa é a força de uma vida que se entrega ao eterno, e não apenas ao que passa. Ao olhar para sua trajetória, percebemos que não há desculpas para a inércia. Sam Hamim foi capaz de abandonar tudo para levar esperança a povos desconhecidos. O que nos impide transformar os ambientes onde já estamos inseridos? Talvez não sejamos chamados a enfrentar martírio físico, mas somos chamados a viver diariamente como testemunhas vivas, mantendo princípios, espalhando bondade e influenciando pelo exemplo. O mundo precisa de pessoas que, como Adalberto, tenham coragem de permanecer firmes mesmo quando o preseo tenha dobrelas. Essa firmeza é o que separa os que passam despercebidos dos que deixam marcas eternas. Assim, o martírio de Adalberto não foi o fim, mas o pão que a sua vida se tornou ainda mais luminosa. Ele nos lembra que uma existência pode ser curta em nós, mas infinita em frutos. Esse testemunho atravessa fronteiras, inspira novos missionários e segue ecoando a hoje como convite. Não desperdiça sua vida em coisas pequenas. Viva com intensidade. Lute pelo que é justo. Mantenha-se fiel ao seu propósito. Porque, não fim, não é o tempo que me vale de uma vida, mas em profundidade com que ela foi vivida. E, nesse sentido, São Adalberto continua a nos desafiar a sermos protagonistas de nossa fé. Se essa mensagem falou com você, não esqueça de deixar o seu like. Se inscreva no canal e ativar o sininho para não perder as próximas histórias inspiradoras. Comparto este vídeo com alguém que precisa de força e coragem para perseverar no propósito. E nos comentários responda: o que mais te inspira na vida de São Adalberto?